Man, is it good to be back on home ice as the Boston Bruins are playing their first home game in over a month. They played one all of February, which I don't know if you count that in. It was like in the middle of the month, and then they had to go to Lake Tahoe. So, anyway, but the first home game of the season won't be easy as they play the team that is currently in first place in the Eastern Division, and that is the Washington Capitals, which means for the first time this season, former Boston Bruins captain of 14 years, Big Zdeno Chara, will be back on the TD Garden ice for the first time this season, again, since becoming a Washington Capital. So, Washington, Boston, first place technically on the line, even though it is still early. We still have 36 more games to go after this. Let's see how it goes on the Bruins Recap Show. Boston Bruins! So before we begin, I just want to really point out the wonderful job that even without fans, unfortunately, given the circumstances, you would love to have fans at this game because the standing ovation and everything for Zdeno Chara would be, really, really well done. But given the circumstances, the Boston Bruins did a video package for Zdeno Chara, as well as they got a handful of fans via Zoom, I believe, to send some well wishes, record that all in, edit it all together. It was a beautifully well done video package. Of course, everybody on their respective benches, given the stick tap for former captain Zdeno Chara. But somewhere in this, we still have a hockey game to talk about, and it was a rough one. So, little housekeeping things to keep in mind. Charlie Coyle not in the lineup. He is in the COVID protocol, so hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully it's, asymptomatic and all of that. So hopefully he feels better and does well with that. Anders Bjork, Chris Wagner, they're back in the lineup after their kind of one-game benching off to the rafters of the press box. And Matty Grzelcyk and David Krejci are back from injury, so they are in the lineup. And also, it is the first game on ice in a Boston Bruin uniform for big Jared Tenorti, and he looks big. He's very big. A big dude. So, starting goaltenders for tonight for Boston, 2 U's, 2 K's, Tuukka Rask sitting on 229 wins in his NHL career. On the other side for Washington, I think he's arguably like 4th string going in, maybe 3rd string. And he's been doing really well for them. And Vitek Vanacek. Boston getting the first and possibly the best chance scoring-wise in this game, maybe the second best. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Matty Grzelcyk doing what he can, does really well. Stretch pass up the ice, finds David Pastrnak all alone. It is a breakaway, and he goes off the post, and then off the back of Vanacek, and out it doesn't go. That's one that David Pastrnak would like to have back. He had Vanacek beat, but you don't beat the post. A little bit later on in the period, a high lob into the zone. Eventually, TJ Oshie will pop it into the net. It'll be challenged for offsides, and if you told me that this wasn't offsides, I would believe you, and if you told me it was, I would also believe you. It's one of those weird ones where you kind of lose sight of the puck because it's a high lob. So, like, in this mess of black seats and all different kind of just sight lines, you lose sight of the puck, but you do see TJ Oshie cross into the zone. I believe it was Oshie. I might be mistaken. Either way, the ruling on the ice by the referees after the challenge, no goal. We stay scoreless. Washington, though, was the better team in the first period. They outshot the Boston Bruins 7-2, although this game, hyper physical between these two teams. A playoff-like atmosphere between the Boston Bruins and the Washington Capitals. And that playoff atmosphere was visceral and just able to be seen throughout the entirety of the game. The Boston Bruins, in the second period, came out. They were much more emotionally invested. They outshot the Washington Capitals in the second 7-4. and just after 2 periods, the combined amount of hits in this game, 46. How many shots were taken in those 2 periods? Only 20. Only 20. This is quite a physical game. I guess the old saying goes, if you give somebody an inch, they'll take a mile. Well, nobody was giving an inch in this game at all. Just, there was no room for anything. So in the third period, things starting to open up a little bit as John Carlson will have the puck at the Bruins offensive zone blue line. He gets it stolen by Brad Marchand, and off to the races he goes. Ends up a 2-on-1 between two of the best players on Boston, the two people you do not want to have a 2-on-1 opportunity to, that being Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak. Marchand passes it over to Pastrnak. Pastrnak flings it between the legs of Vanecek on a one-time. It is a goal for Boston. 1-0 lead, but the lead will not stay for very long as a just awful, lazy pass from Sean Kuraly ends up being intercepted by TJ Oshie, gives it over to Nick Jansen, who takes a shot, and the initial save by Rask, but he loses it as it looks like he makes the blocker save, and then it bounces off somebody's back. The puck bounces everywhere, and the defense, which was Brendan Carlo and Jakub Zboril, who I've praised earlier in previous episodes, both of them combine on one player, and they absolutely lose Lars Eller, who gets the puck on his stick and buries it past Tuukka Rask, making it a 1-1 game. A little bit later on in the third period, and this was a theme throughout the entirety of the night, is Trent Frederic trying to fight trying to fight Alexander Ovechkin, which did not work well for Andrei Svechnikov last season. I think maybe Trent Frederic could do a little bit better. Not 100% sure. But in the third period, Frederic was whacking away with a couple of cross checks, and Alex Ovechkin just gives him 2 right to the meat and the potatoes, right between the legs. Gets his money's worth, as the NHL, as of today, announced that Ovechkin gets the league maximum $5,000 fine for spearing. Both of them would go to the box. 2 minutes for roughing to Ovechkin, 2 minutes for a cross-check to Trent Frederic, both of which you can't do. Anyway, it stays a 1-1 game. We go to overtime, and Tuukka Rask again saving the Boston Bruins in overtime because they easily had multiple opportunities by Alex Ovechkin, by Dmitry Orlov, where this game could have ended in overtime. But Tuukka Rask, standing on his head, saves the bacon. We go to the shootout, the skills competition. Boston electing to shoot first. Jake DeBrusk goes in, saved by Vanecek. On the other side, Jakub Vrana skates in and does a little deke, does a little head fake, does a little leg fake, goes backhand, back over to his forehand, and just beats Tuukka Rask to the post, puts it in. Later on in that shootout, both David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand would have opportunities, would be saved by Vanecek. Oshie for Washington, saved by Rask. But either way, Vanecek saves all 3 shots against Boston, which means the Boston Bruins fall to the Washington Capitals in the skills competition. A brutal, physical game. 54 combined hits in this game between these two teams. Washington will ultimately end up outshooting Boston 28-19. I believe it was like 5-1 shots in overtime. Not good enough as far as, trying to get shots on net. 19 is not good enough. I mean, you could say they had one really good opportunity that if it hits the post, if it doesn't hit the post, it goes in, and it's, you're looking at a different hockey game altogether. But it hit the post, which means it's not a shot on goal, because the NHL works that way. But these teams will do it again Friday night, and I don't expect this to be any different. It's going to be a slog. It's going to be a battle. It is going to be a war between these two teams. And Boston will hope to do better Friday against the Washington Capitals. So before my normal send-off, I will say one more time, and I'll probably say it a handful more times. I do know that eventually there will be fans in the TD Garden that will get to see Zdeno Chara play in his old barn. But until that day, thank you, Big Z, and we'll see you next time on the Bruins Recap Show.